The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, 'You shall not kill,' and whoever kills will be liable to judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Again, you have heard that it was said to your ancestors, 'Do not take a false oath, but make good to the Lord all that you vow.' But I say to you, do not swear at all. Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Anything more is from the evil one." The Gospel of the Lord.
We continue today with a little more insight into the great Sermon on the Mount. Began a couple of weeks ago, of course, with the Beatitudes, and I'm sure you all remember that. All right? And that's just a little bit of the surface that Jesus is leading us to. And then last week, we dug a little bit deeper, trying to get at the inner meaning of what Jesus is talking about. Today we're doing kind of the same thing, but we're looking at the Ten Commandments. And Jesus is asking us to go to the next level. Go to the next level. Part of this part of the Sermon on the Mount presents Jesus deepening the moral law through interior conversion rather than external compliance alone. In other words, just don't obey the law on the surface. Thou shalt not kill. Well, yeah, I didn't kill anybody. But boy, did I get angry at somebody. And boy, did I want to punch this guy's nose out, you know? Or boy, did I really, you know what I mean? That's what we have to keep under control, that anger. Yeah, we might not kill anybody, but we may get close to violence by just our thoughts. And that's what Jesus is talking about. We need to have an interior conversion rather than just the external compliance. And he calls his disciples to this righteousness because this really, truly fulfills the Old Testament precepts and reflects divine perfection. Jesus said he came here to fulfill the law, didn't he? Yeah. And this is how it's fulfilled. Rather than abolish it, yes, the Ten Commandments are always going to stay. The moral setup of those Ten Commandments is always going to be there. It's not going to change. That's God's law. But it's how we operate within each and every one of those. Yes, we might not commit adultery, but by looking and observing and whatever, we're committing adultery in our hearts. Remember Jimmy Carter said that? If you're as old as me, you know, I've lusted in my heart. That's what he's talking about. Because he knows of his own weaknesses. And we all have these weaknesses. So this is the first major point here. Jesus fulfills rather than abolishes the law. We need to dig deeper, is what he's telling us. Secondly, righteousness must exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees. The scribes and the Pharisees only look at the surface of the law. Remember how, many times Jesus was corrected by the Pharisees because of the fact of, why do your disciples not wash properly before they eat? Why are they picking those heads of grain and munching on them when it's the Sabbath and they're not supposed to be doing that kind of work? All right? That's just the surface that the Pharisees were concerned about and not digging deeper. Jesus says that these universal virtues surpass Pharisaic righteousness, and breaking even the least commands makes one least in the kingdom. Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes or the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom. And thirdly, we need to develop what's called a radical interior purity in non-retaliatory love. What does that mean? Jesus demands severe measures against sin's roots. All right? He says when plucking out the eye of another or cutting off the hand is, this is what causes our stumbling, and prioritizing our eternal life over bodily wholeness. That's what we need to do. So if your right hand tells you to sin, cut it off, right? Remember that line that he gave? All right? And what he means there is you're better off going in heaven with only one hand than going down below with both hands. That's basically what he's saying, And what happens when people strike out against Jesus? He tells you to do what? Turn the other cheek. Turn the other cheek. So these three things, this fulfillment rather than abolishing the law, the fact that our righteousness must exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees, this radical interior purity and non-retaliatory love, these are the three major messages behind what's in this gospel. And we read the shorter version of it today, all right? There is a 2-page version of this gospel, which I still would encourage you to read. As a matter of fact, I'd encourage you to read all of the Sermon on the Mount. It is the greatest sermon ever proclaimed. And came from Jesus, right? So it's got to be good. But in summary, these three things that I mentioned, they call for a law-fulfilling interiority, superior righteousness through action and heart, and Christ-like perfection in relationships. Now, how do we get there? How do we get to this Christ-like perfection? Well, we got a whole season of it coming up. And I'd be remiss to say it didn't start with fish fries on Wednesday. All right, by the Knights of Columbus. All right, but no, seriously. After you have your fish fry, got your ashes on your forehead, what we're asked truly to do is begin a process of internal change. The Greeks called it metanoia, a change of heart. I think we might even sing that song, "Change Our Hearts This Time," right? We'd sing that one, of course we do. It's a great song, because that's a song that helps us enter into this change that we need to do. And this change is not just obeying commandments on the surface. It's internalization. Internalize this. Internalize the goodness. This is what Jesus is talking about. This is how he gets us to help him build the kingdom. Because that's what he's doing all during ordinary time, is building the kingdom through the various miracles, through the various cures, through the various proclamations and sermons that he gives, and the various demonstrations. It's to show us how to internally change ourselves to be more like him. That's how together we build the kingdom.